at the end of the day, what is marketing? A lot of businesses, whether it's small or big, they want to attract or go to places where the customers are. If the customers are going to be in the metaverse, that's where the companies would like to be. The customers are on social media platform. That's why companies are there on the platform. So one advice to smaller companies: be aware how this space is evolving and be ready to plug in your existing marketing. Like everyone has a budget, right? Like, okay, this much on social media, this much on XYZ. So very soon you would have to carve out one more segment for metaverse. So, but yeah, that's how it is going to be.
So, welcome to the podcast, Rajan. We are so glad to have you here today with us. Into the conversation, we would like to know a brief about your journey in the data space, your education, and how do you feel about working for one of the biggest tech companies that are out there and is also a dream company for many people. So, we want to know about your journey and how did it all happen.
Sure. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity and calling me here. And obviously, Facebook or now Meta is definitely one of the dream companies for many. And rightly so, being inside the system, I can definitely understand why it is a dream company for many. Now, let me start my journey, and I'm going to probably take a bit of a time, but I guess that's okay. So my
Please,
journey,
please.
my journey into data space kind of started back from college days. Like when I was doing my engineering from IIT Kanpur at that time itself, I figured during the college that I'm not that great at core engineering. So instead of being becoming a bad civil or environmental engineer, I was kind of already starting for options. Good part was that I was already in one of the premium institutes in India, so the information that I had was kind of already better than like what other folks would have received at that time, because obviously today, as of today, the information parity is there, but in those times, like I graduated in 2009, not everyone had the same level of information available to them, same level of opportunities available to them, and probably in some form and shape it still exists, but probably the world is getting flatter. Anyways, coming to the point, when I was graduating, I did realize that okay, I am actually good at math and statistics. I actually scored very good grades in those kind of subjects, and I was kind of putting similar efforts for each subject. But like on core engineering subjects, I was scoring a C, and for core maths and stat subject, I was scoring an A. Then I realized that okay, that's my natural bent of my own mind. When the placements happened back in the days, I actually it was 2009, so it was a recession year, and there was a huge hue and cry about not getting the right company and whatnot. So options were limited. Among the options I got, I actually set for the placement, and on the day one, I got two offers, one from Deloitte and one from MarketRx. That was a smaller company at that time. I chose MarketRx because I thought that naturally my bent of mind that okay, I should not go into IT consulting and rather I should go into analytics, which sounds like something to do with the math. So, okay, maybe that's the natural choice. And B, I got a call from placement department that you have got two offers and Deloitte has a waiting list. So please do join MarketRx so someone else can get a job in Deloitte. So I said, okay, fine. So I was learning the basic tech side of the analytics or data science. Like, I was very itchy to move to a finance domain kind of a company, and I luckily got a job in Amex like 1.5 years down the line, which was a bigger, better brand and better kind of work. So obviously I shifted there. I stayed with Amex for about 10 years, and the journey there was not linear. Obviously, when I started my career in Amex, I was into a strategy team where I was using the data, but I was using the models built by modeling teams. So you can imagine there were too many Chinese walls, which are bound to happen in a bigger company. That you are focused on your particular work, you don't have a Hawkeye view like what others are doing. So even though you spend 3, 4, 5 years in a company, you tend to become expert in one particular domain, and that was happening to me for a long time until probably I moved to US in 2015. So for 4 or 5 years, I was a risk management expert. And after 5 years, I had a choice like, okay, I want to continue my career as a risk management expert, which is, again, it's a good career choice, or a data science expert. And that's when I took a change internally. I actually took, again, a deliberate change. I had a choice to go into the current role and get a promotion probably a bit early versus change my field a bit. Maybe the promotion will get a bit delayed, but uh, to be very open with you guys, I actually heard that someone somewhere in that data science team made a shift to Google, and I'm like, okay, from a finance company to Google, that's unheard of, because a lot of time people shift within the industry. People shift from Amex to Goldman Sachs and all the kind of PE and hedge funds. And that was, something I would have expected, that, okay, that is a reasonable shift, that, you transfer your business here to there. But shifting an industry was like a bit odd to me, that too after a bit of an experience. But that time, I didn't have a very clear picture that I have to go into Google or a Facebook kind of company. And very openly with you guys, I don't even think at that time I was even ready, or I had a strong imposter syndrome that probably I'm not even made for those kind of companies. So, but I anyways started, my journey into hardcore data science. I was always on the periphery of it, so it was not like a very big shift. And one thing led to another, and again, as I said, a few years went by, and I never thought that Google or Facebook or big tech company is something I could ever enter. But yes, I gained confidence by looking at people around me, and the hiring patterns and US particularly, that okay, I could possibly crack into one of the bigger banks like Goldman Sachs, or or some specified PE or a hedge fund. By the time it was 2020, I kind of thought like, okay, it's gonna be close to 10 years at Amex, and I think I should change. I should have a outside perspective. I just didn't want to complete 10 years in one company. I thought like, okay, it's too lazy on my side. Even though I kind of was growing internally, I got like 4 or 5 promotion in 10 years. On an average, it was going very well. But I ended up choosing a job in a startup. Not a startup. It was like a 10-year-old company, but it was a small company. They gave me a great role as a data science manager, directly reporting to the CEO there. It was a comparatively small company. I had like 5 to 10 people team, and a lot of my core finance and risk management experience was getting used there. So I could really feel like, okay, a lot of my 5-10 years journey was being used there as a a division head of that department head. But my journey was short, because after a few months, I got a call from a recruiter from Facebook, and I thought it's a spam call. So I just, joked it, and then, I didn't really consider it seriously. Then I got an email from the same person, like, okay, as per the discussion, let's have this. And I'm like, okay, it must be a joke. In fact, I missed the call. I went for a camping trip. I missed the call, and then I reached back. I thought like, okay, it may be genuine. I don't know if it is spam, because, as I said, if it was a call from Citibank or Chase or Goldman Sachs, that would have been more tenable and more expected. But someone looking at my LinkedIn profile and reaching out to me for a job at Facebook, which was a bit odd. But I ended up speaking to them, and to my own surprise, when the recruiter was talking to me, she was actually trying to gauge whether I can transfer my learnings across the industry or not, which, as I said, was a big hurdle for me in my head. But to my own surprise, when I started talking to the recruiter, she was asking me questions, trying to gauge that thing, and I was actually able to transfer the knowledge. She was posing a social media kind of a question, and based on my experience of like 10 years in finance and industry, I could figure out a similar problem I have solved, but in some different context, and I could translate those learnings. And after that call, I think I was convinced that, okay, I can change industries because I can transfer my knowledge. So it's not a complete waste. But at the same time, as you can imagine, it's always a hard choice to make, because if you are, leaving your 10 years of some industry core experience and you're going into some different industry, you have to kind of accept that, okay, there will be some sunk cost, you'll have to start from somewhere and so on. But obviously, Facebook or Meta is Meta. So I didn't want to lose the opportunity call at that time. I took the call. Obviously, I had to go through one of the screening rounds as well for the coding round. Luckily, I cleared that. And again, the imposter syndrome was strong. I thought like, okay, I haven't touched coding for many years, so I may not be able to clear it, but I did. I am in Meta, and yeah, that has been my high-level journey. And I'll take a pause here. As you can imagine, it was not a straightforward journey with a very clear, goal in the head. I had always had a slightly looser vision that, okay, I want to generally go in this direction in a few years, and generally, if you keep trying, things generally work out. That has been my journey broadly.
That's awesome.
It was very inspiring actually. And I mean, you toned down it a lot, very humbly you put across, what you went through and what you did. So, I mean, but yeah, I'm left inspired right now. I'm just,
Glad you feel like that. Yeah.
So you worked for more than a decade in data science across industries. How has science changed your life over the years?
Uh, sure, it has changed a lot. And if I have to pick like in a few dimensions how it has changed, so in terms of quantity, obviously a lot of companies have the ability to store and parse and clean and actually leverage a lot of big data. So the whole term around big data, it has exploded. Now we have the tech capability to store and munch and actually use this data. Secondly, the data has become complex. So obviously, it's not just the size is increasing. Now it's not just, like some kind of a tabular data. Now it's text data or voice data or video data, audio data, all kind of data is there. And so obviously, and it's now being in social media space, I can definitely say that, and a combination of all these, which becomes like a complex object in itself. So let's say, for example, if someone makes a post, so when someone makes a post in Facebook or Instagram, they might post a picture and then, or they might put some text there and so on. So technically, it becomes a complex object of combination of a few things. So imagine like, I mean, it's easy to say that, bigger companies have like, oh, all these fancy algorithms to read this. It's not easy. It is a hard task for a data scientist or ML engineer to actually parse that information into individual pieces, and then still be able to rely and then label those information, build machine learning models on that information, and then eventually make the decision back. So yes, complexity has increased a lot. I mean, I'm taking a simple example, but the point is that okay, the data is becoming huge, and that's why it's not like the information is becoming huge as well. So we have to figure out like okay, as a data scientist, as an expert in these fields, the first task is and very very important task is to actually cut through the huge data and actually still be able to gain insights and learnings which are applicable. So that's definitely one task, and that's why I'm very very bullish on this field as a data science. I don't think sometimes people ask question that okay, everything is getting automated, even the data science part could get automated. I don't think this part can be automated as such. Yes, there will be tools to automate some of the time consuming tasks that we have, but the ability to actually create frameworks, understand basic hidden trends in the data in such amount of huge data, that will still be there. That requirement to actually pass through a person who can actually look through the data and understand what it is would be there. Secondly, I think, and a bit more cliche, a bit more niche example here, data labeling would be huge in coming years, because as the data is becoming huge, yes, no organization in the world can actually take billions or trillions of decisions every day, and they are doing it, right? For example, Twitter. If you post something bad on Twitter, generally, it covers it with a label that okay, it's an adult content, or sometimes deletes it, or some kind of action is taken on that, right? So imagine billions of tweets are being thrown every day. Now obviously it's not humanly possible for someone to read each and every tweet. So obvious logical explanation is that fine, the algorithms would do it, but the algorithms can only work when there is a seed, there is a at least some X percentage of the samples are actually reviewed by human labelers, and then using those labels, someone can extrapolate to billions and trillions of data points. So I believe as the data is growing across industries and whatnot, the ability to label the data by human labelers, and that's a skilled job. I would still not consider it as a very very high or specialized skill, but it could be a very very good employment generation opportunity for a country like India, because if you have internet connection, if you have like a basic understanding how this framework works, why all these algorithm and machine learning models are built on actually a human labeled data, and for that you need humans to label the data, and you cannot hire a high paying data scientist or ML engineer to do that job, so it has to be outsourced. So I believe there is a huge opportunity coming, and as we grow, even the smaller companies are growing now, and they're understanding the importance of big data and data science, data analytics, and they're coming with innovative models. So a lot of requirements will come not just from bigger giants like Facebook or Meta or Twitter, but a lot of requirement will also come from this long tail of smaller companies who also are building their data science capabilities.
That completely makes sense. And with, like you mentioned, about a lot of technologies that are coming up, so we are also hearing a lot of buzz around AR, VR, and metaverse. And since you come from Meta, so I think you must be having a lot of talks around that as well. So, what do you think? How is it going to affect data or data-related fields in general as these new technologies come on? So, what changes are expected in this field?
Sure. So I'll definitely talk about the interaction of how the whole buzz around Meta and obviously it all started probably when Mr. Zuck kind of shared that video with everyone, and everyone got excited. And Metaverse is definitely the future. Not saying that because I'm an employee of Meta, but even if let's say tomorrow I leave the company, I still am bullish on Metaverse per se. Um, so yes, in my mind, metaverse is the future. One thing I want to just set the context for viewers as well. Um, Looking at the phone, like your head down and looking at your phone, is not a natural experience. The natural experience is right now it's still more natural experience. We are not even looking at phone. We're looking at a bit of a broader screen. And our journey has evolved as humans. Like we have evolved from computers to laptops and mobiles and whatnot. And I think the next platform could be your glasses, where you can actually transport yourself. You don't have to, like, glasses are still more natural, right? Like you just wear them and that's it. But for example, now that we move to glasses, that would be the tool for us to connect to metaverse. For example, laptop is right now a tool to connect to Zoom and eventually talk to you guys. Eventually, I'll have to wear something to be able to connect and see you guys. So rest of the technology, whether it's a hologram, whether it's the whole digital creation of metaverse, let's keep that aside for a moment. I'm sure, like, we can create the whole world out there, and obviously a lot of gaming companies are already ahead in terms of creating that world in some sense. So it's already there. The problem is the pipe. Like, how do I make sure that as a human, if I have to connect to that virtual world, what is the pipe? Like, what is the device I connect it through? And data science has more utility there in terms of, let's say, when I'm wearing a glass, there are basic questions like, um, if I have, as a user, I'm wearing a glasses that connects me to kind of a portal or virtual game. How long the users will be actually able to use it without even feeling a sensation of vomiting or something like that? Where exactly the switches are going to be? Is the battery gonna be too hot after some time to wear the glasses, and so on? So there are so many business questions that right now we're still early in the journey, and engineers who are building this, like software engineers who are building these tech products inside this to be able to do that, they don't have a clue, and that's why they need data scientists to actually glean through the data and understand like what works, what doesn't work, and how to fix what doesn't work. Like, okay, what next? Okay, if a switch button on the top of your ear doesn't work, maybe it should be slightly 1 inch ahead of that or 1 inch behind that. Those questions may look minor, but it has a big impact, especially for a company like Snap or Snapchat or Meta, like who are building or going into these directions. These small decisions have like $1 billion impact. So, and as a data science enthusiast, or as a data scientist myself, those are the kind of questions that people are trying to answer right now. Again, we are very early, and I can't divulge a lot of more information on that. But yeah, that's one example I gave you. But data doesn't always tell you what to do. So as a data scientist, you get comfortable with ambiguity. That's the natural change as a data scientist you have, because there is never or hardly a straightforward answer as in statistics. So you kind of be as a data scientist, as you evolve, it's a work hazard that you become more comfortable with ambiguity, and still be able to take a decision that, okay, I don't have the very clear idea, but on the basis of the data, I think this one has a higher chances of success, or this one has a higher chances of adoption. Let's try in this, and you experiment a lot. You experimented, it fails, that's fine. Try new things. So that's the stage right now. The development of metaverse is obviously, Meta is one company. A lot of companies are doing that, and in some aspects, even smaller companies may be slightly ahead of the curve. Some bigger companies may be slightly behind the curve. Only few products are there early in the journey. Facebook has a product called Ray-Ban Stories, It's actually just a smart glass. It's not even an AR VR glass. And after that, I can't tell right now, but like you can say that, okay, this is the first product in that direction. It's a public knowledge, so I can share it. But if you use that glass, you can actually record or, do a basic functionality that your phone can do, like talk and record videos and photos. And I use that more often. And I provide my feedback as well as a user. And teams kind of use that data to not just enhance this product, but also think ideas. Okay, now that if we have to build a better or different version of it, to go into AR, VR, what can we learn from this product and build that product? So
Okay. So when it comes to marketing, what do you think how important is leveraging data and new concepts like AR and VR or metaverse for a growing company in the digital space? Like a lot of companies are in like startups, they are in AR and VR and they're getting into metaverse and metaverse marketing. So what is your opinion on that?
my opinion is that it's still a bit early, but obviously early movers may have advantage in near future. So marketing in metaverse, at the end of the day, what is marketing? A lot of businesses, whether it's small or big, they want to attract or go to places where the customers are. If the customers are going to be in the metaverse, that's where the companies would like to be. The customers are on social media platform, that's why companies are there on the platforms, right? So that's what it is. Now the smaller companies are, as we were discussing earlier, they are creating those pipes or those bridges through some devices so that people can connect to their version of this reality or metaverse. So and obviously the world is more flatter now, so the growth hopefully is going to be more secular in terms of there are not going to be two or three major platforms or social media platforms who are going to drive everything. In my mind, my bet would be that a lot of smaller companies and a lot of a smaller version of metaverses will evolve, and people may call it even different things. Like so those things will evolve, and obviously to people's choosing, they may or may not like one or the other format and whatnot. So those things are evolving. It's important for new age companies, and especially even existing companies, to be aware of these technologies and understand where the space is growing. Because as you can imagine, if you look back our own history of social media and online engagement, right, like 5-10 years or 15 years ago when we were in school, and probably that's the time when internet was kind of booming up. And obviously there were some early movers, and initially obviously there were some Luddites as well, like, oh, what am I going to do online? Our business is offline, we are doing great. Obviously they did well for quite some time, and a lot of them are still doing well for quite some time. But it is a challenge. The technology, you cannot avoid the technology. It will evolve, it will eat up. You have to adjust with the technology. A lot of people with that mindset that they can continue their business without the technology, sooner or later mostly they perish, right? So that's why it's important for everyone to be aware of this. Obviously not everything is a fad, but you have to be conscious also, like how much of your time and energy and your resources you're putting this side right now, given the space is evolving. Not many people are on these kind of platforms or on metaverses right now, and it's still early. But if you, for example, bigger companies like Nike, you may have heard that Nike is already starting a shop in one of the metaverses, with Decentraland. So obviously, a lot of those things are already happening. Some bigger companies have identified the opportunity early, maybe because they understand that they have to sell the shoes to young population who are mostly on this platform right now. So as a company, you have to figure out what's the kind of demographic your customers are, and are those demographic in metaverse right now or going to be there. So accordingly, you can figure out like what's the right time for you to be in the metaverse, and what's the right kind of metaverse you want to be with. So one advice to smaller companies: be aware how this space is evolving, and be ready to plug in your existing marketing. Everything, everyone has a budget, right? Like, okay, this much on social media, this much on XYZ. So very soon you would have to, carve out one more segment for metaverse. So, but yeah, that's how it is going to be.
Nice. So as you mentioned that, every company needs to be ahead with the technology, otherwise they'll perish, right? So now in the era where everybody's getting online and everybody's considered like it's considered a concern that people will start valuing virtual world more. What do you think about that? What's your opinion on this?
A great question. And in fact, as a person who is working with Instagram right now, technically I work with Instagram and I'm responsible for safety of our youth population on Instagram. And my objective function, my team's objective function is not to optimize ROI or dollars for Meta. My objective function is to actually save more and more youth on our platforms. So I can totally understand the direction you're coming from, that, okay, what are the, flip side of this whole, data driven culture and being online, creating this virtual world, how this affects a real world. So I would take an example in layman terms, like 10 years ago, when I myself joined these kind of social media platform back in college 10, 15 years ago, we used to think that it's just a game, it's virtual. It's not part of our real life. It's just an extension of, which is separate from our real life. And that drove some of our behavior on those platforms. Early users on those platforms were very, I would say it was a very different behavior. We were not the same person as we are on our social media platform in early days. Obviously, it happened to everyone when they joined social media platform. People started behaving a bit differently because of their own understanding how these platforms work. But you speak today, as you already kind of said, that the boundary is very small. Now, what you post online versus what you are, it's more or less part of the same world, right? If you say something on WhatsApp versus on a voice call versus face to face, there's hardly any difference. You said that, right? So it's just a medium. So I believe that's how even the metaverse is going to become. It's gonna be just a medium. And yes, right now it is less valuable, or less likely to be seen as real and virtual. But in my mind, the way I look at the whole thing is that it's all real. We are humans. We just need mediums. Doesn't matter whether I'm sitting with you across the table and having this discussion, or through an interface that we're talking through this. I am me. Whatever I say kind of can be attributed to me. Same thing is going to happen to metaverse. The whole social media wave or internet wave kind of missed is that regulations didn't catch up with the progress of technology. So at the end of the day, people are doing business, right? So if regulations or governments or authorities can create clear cut laws, for example, in India, I'll take an India example, but I work globally, so I'm just picking it out. I think some IT Act is there, which kind of got made like probably 10 years ago. But before that, for like 5, 6 years, 8 years, social media didn't have any kind of regulation. You may argue whether regulation is good or bad, but having a clear cut regulation is very, very important, because that allows the whole ecosystem, the whole private enterprise, the companies, to actually adhere to that regulation. Right now, what's happening is that because of a lack of regulation, every company is coming up with their own policies. Twitter is coming up with their own policies, which kind of tweet is allowed and not allowed, and so with Instagram and Facebook and everyone else, right? Ideally, there should be a common regulation that this is the policy. You may or have a stricter policy for your own platform, but this is the minimum basic guideline from the government that should be there for each and every different kind of use cases that are evolving.
That is actually a very valid point, because like I think lately we've heard a lot of debates, a lot of issues coming up in these lines, and maybe it's just coming up in the recent years, 2 3 years, but it's been there, just that realization was not there, that this is also required. So definitely. And as we speak about metaverse and becoming more interactive, what do you think about the current social media space that is there? So we already have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All these platforms are already there, and the audience, they are becoming more interactive, more immersive into the content that is coming out of the platforms. So what do you see as a future of these existing platforms moving forward?
So yeah, I'll give answer in like a few multiple parts. In the current form and shape as we understand the social media platforms, how best are they going to evolve? Obviously, every one of these platforms have acquired a huge customer base. So now that you have the loyal customer base who use your existing products, any natural tendency for any company would be to provide more products, more content. So obviously, whether it's Facebook or Twitter and whatnot, they will try and provide you more products. And when I say products, for example, on Facebook, now you have a marketplace, or you have a fundraising campaign, or you have XYZ other things, or you can go to Facebook Watch and look at, a bunch of shows. Apple is doing the same thing, so everyone is becoming everything. right? So that's the world we are going in, because now that I have my customers on the hook, I want to tie as many ropes as possible so that the customer never gets away. And that's a natural tendency for any company. But yeah, the experience will become very, very immersive. That's something that these companies have realized, that more immersive experience gives customer a better experience. So those are going to be the next win. Particularly speaking about some of the platforms, as I said, right now there is a bit of a monopoly in device or hardware space by Apple and like Android and whatnot. So a lot of these apps, for example, Google has to live on Apple Store or a particular device. Microsoft can launch Bing and replace Google, as a browser. So those things can happen, and that's why a lot of these tech companies who are originally like app companies are trying to become hardware companies as well, so that they own the device as well. So they don't have to be pushed back by the device owner, the company that owns the device, like Microsoft or Apple. They don't have to bow down to those companies. So that's the evolution we will see in near future, and that's why the big bets on different kind of devices. So that's one. And in terms of experience, I already said that, yes, it is going to evolve. How? We don't know. It is going to be experimental. Data scientists like me will launch something, will read the human behavior, will iterate on it, will change it in a different way. And we right now don't know in what direction, it will go, but it will be based on how adaptation increases and, how people react, how the data gets translated back, and then that will continue. So, but yeah, I'm very bullish again on this whole space.
That's nice. So in a world where data is like having a very crucial, important role to play in every industry and domain, what is your advice for people who are looking to build a career in this domain?
Sure. So I would say the building blocks are always more or less the same. That if even today, if someone has to start in data science from a fresh, whether they are in school or they are tenured, in some different field, if they are really, really passionate about data science, yes, data science is one of the major growing field. So I guess yes, it's a very lucrative and satisfying field to start with. Yes, it's a very impact driven field that you actually assess, and you become very critical in your own thought process, and that's what is kind of required as well for the job, that you have to be very critical of what someone is saying, and to analyze that information, to synthesize that information, to revert back with your critical thinking. So if I have to circle back and say, like, okay, as a data scientist, what are the three things important? A, coding skills. Learn SQL as much early as possible, and practice it as much as possible. SQL is like all has remained, like, at least for last 10 years, it has remained like the building block of everything around data. So definitely that's not going away for at least next 10 years or more. Python is the next thing. It's a free version of the SAS as we used to do it in ages ago. Only companies who could afford SAS license could do it, but now Python has changed the game. A lot of schools these days are teaching in their colleges right now, so that's pretty good. I think that adaptation is increasing because it allows you to quickly use each other's libraries and whatnot. From coding perspective, these are the two things I would say. uh, Other thing for data science is required is mathematics and statistics. So the basic understanding of maths and hypothesis testing is very, very required. And third thing, which a lot of times people don't talk about, as I was preluding earlier, critical thinking and communication is also very, very important. So if you ask me, all three dimensions are important: A, coding, SQL, and to some extent, if you are advanced in Python, maths, basic probability, and to an extent, if you are advanced, then probability regression and whatnot. And critical thinking, to some extent, it includes communication, clear business, solving a business problem, and the ability to actually translate a business problem into a data problem, solve it, and then again convert your insight from a data problem to a business problem. That ability is comparatively not told to youngsters, and a lot of people spend a lot of time just learning and enhancing their coding skills, and initially that doesn't take them anywhere. So yeah, those three things I would say everyone should start.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the beautiful answer. I think it's going to really help and add value to a lot of people who are aspiring to be in this field and be future data scientists or analysts. So I think this is going to be very helpful for them. And as we come to the, almost to the end of the podcast, to spice up the conversation a bit, we would like to, start with the rapid fire round. So just to take a heads up from you. So are you ready?
Okay, all right. Let me plug up and yeah, hopefully I'm ready. Sure.
Great, great. Okay. So starting with the first question. So what movie or book or TV show kind of inspired you in a way or left a very significant impact in your life?
From the recent time, I would say I just watched this movie 83 that impacted me. One of the particular dialogue that impacted me was when Ranveer Singh, who was playing couple, was saying to her to his wife that when people say that you're not doing well, you're not doing great, that's still okay because I am not, and I can get better. But when people say, oh, you have done enough, that's fine, that's good enough, that really really angers him because he can be better, he can be even bigger, but people are kind of dumbing him down, and that's the anger he has, and that's the anger he hold against everyone, like, okay, it's not enough. If you settle for that, that's what your life is going to be. You have to target bigger. So I think that's that's one thing that stayed with me after the movie.
Amazing. So coming to the second question, what is that one lesson that took you a lot of time to learn?
Okay, it's gonna be imposter syndrome. So I had a big imposter syndrome, and as I said earlier, when I got a job with Facebook, for a time being, I thought like, okay, they made a mistake in hiring. Why are they paying me that much? I don't deserve that much, And maybe they will figure out like, okay, the interview somehow I cracked it, but I'm not gonna be good at it. So that imposter syndrome was very strong. Luckily, Facebook training material has a huge chapter on that, and they kind of talk to you very seriously on this syndrome and make you aware that okay, this is the syndrome you have to address with yourself and be confident. So I think that is something it took me a long time to understand that it's a natural tendency sometimes to underplay yourself and feel underconfident that okay, you're not made for this, or you have made here by bluffing your way out, but it's not. You have to be confident where you are. You deserve this space. So I think that took me a long time to learn.
That's amazing. And coming to the last question. So if given a chance, what is that one superpower that you would like to have for a day?
If I have to choose right now, given my uh, given my time, I would say time dilation, or ability to slow down the time would be definitely the superpower I would like to have, so that I can actually use my time better to create most impact. But yeah, that's the one superpower I would like to have.
Nice. That's amazing. We all need that superpower.
Uh,
So yeah. Right. So as we come to the end of this conversation, I think it's been really, really insightful and full of, I think learnings. And especially for the people in the data field who are looking forward to make it big in the data field, I think this is going to add real value to them. And but before we end this conversation, I would like to ask you for one advice that you would like to give to the youth in general, or maybe to the people who are trying to make it big in the tech space. So what would be that one piece of advice from your all the experiences and life learnings that you've been through?
sure. One advice that I would have given myself like 10 years ago is that if you feel uh, uh, something different than the crowd, speak it aloud. Say it. You will find your own community. If I have to go back in time, or if I can suggest someone, go with your gut. You will find your own followers. You will find your own community, and you'll find people who believe in your thought process. Uh, don't always get as I call it, like tyranny of the average. Don't always go down by the what the average consensus is. So it never it's never gonna give you the success or the happiness that you are looking for. But yeah, that's what it is.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It was so nice, having you with us here in the podcast. And I cannot just help myself but repeat that I'm pretty sure it's going to help a lot of people out there, and it's going to affect and hopefully in a very good way impact a lot of lives. Be it a person who's listening to this only for the data science reason, or an entrepreneur, or anyone for that matter. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you so much for being with us here. And it was complete honor and pleasure to have you with us today. So thank
Same
you so
here.
much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for calling me. Glad that you guys invited me here, and happy, and hopeful that this conversation really helps a lot of people. Cool. Thanks a lot again for inviting me.
If you need any help in staying ahead of the curve for AR/VR content or immersive experience creation for your clients or maybe your own company, do check out the email in the description below, wherein you can get in touch with us and our team of experts will contact you and help you with the same. So do check it out. Thank you.